Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another podcast of Born from Sin. Today, I'm going to be talking about my best friend, Chantal. A few episodes ago, I had done a podcast in regards to my sister, and during that podcast, I was talking about my best friend, Chantal, who was the only person that I really considered my sister growing up. Now, being a child, right up until about grade 8, I bounced around a lot from one school to another. So it made it very difficult for me to make actual friends. I was always the new kid. I was at one school for a couple months and then boom, we were off to another one. We moved around a lot when I was a child. I never made friends very easily because of it. I did, meet a few people throughout life or whatever that I unfortunately have lost touch with, and I would love to know how they're doing, but have no idea how to even get a hold of them to, even with Facebook and all that stuff, no idea where these people are. 1986. My mom and I had finally settled down in Sudbury, Ontario. And I started going to a school called St. David's. I was in grade 8 at the time. It was actually the last half of my grade 8. I had done the first half in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. So, first day of school, and I'm nervous. And of course, I'm in one of those situations again where I'm the new kid. I was very reserved at the time because I was still going through the fact that we had just, gone to court a year before, had my dad charged, and he was currently in prison at that time. My mom had just gotten out of a drug and alcohol rehab center, and we had just literally been placed back together after me being in foster care. So I didn't go around sharing my story a whole lot with people at that point in time because I was still brand new. Their school system was set up a little bit differently because they had such a large grade 8. We actually had two classes. So I was in one, and my friend Chantal ended up being in the other grade 8 class. Some of our classes would sometimes be combined together, like our music class. So that's how I ended up meeting Chantal. We were put together to do a project. Now, anybody that's a little bit older like myself actually might get a little giggle out of this one because we had to pick a commercial and sing it out. So Chantal and I had decided that we were gonna do the Big Mac commercial because being brand new, I didn't really know a whole lot about her. She didn't know a whole lot about me, but we were both like, yeah, I like Big Macs, so we picked the Big Mac song. And that song literally held us together for so many years after that. When I first got to know Chantal, she had already lost her dad at that point in time. And I think it was probably at that point in time that I sat back and thought to myself that although I had gone through a lot in my life, my dad was still alive. And I don't know, I felt very bad for her because she had a father that loved her and her siblings and loved her mom, and he was a good man. He was not abusive like my father was. And she lost him when she was 9 years old. And she was just like me. We were just these lost little souls just waiting to be discovered by someone. And I was very, very thankful that the Big Mac song was the song that literally grew a friendship that turned into so much more. If it wasn't for Chantal, I don't know how I would have made it through so many points in my life, so many. We were there for each other for everything. She was there to help me raise my children. I was there when her son was born. We were there for each other's marriages and divorces and losing um losing our parents, and we just experienced so many things together. And it just e- each thing that we went through just brought us that much closer. So on April the 20th, a few years ago, I was actually in a cooking competition, and I got a phone call. I was in the middle of creating a new recipe, and my hands were all gunky, and my phone started ringing, and it said Chantal, and I was like, oh, that's strange for her to be calling me without, shooting me a message like, hey, are you available for a call? I didn't think much of it at first. I was like, okay, I'll check the calls, see if she left me a message. After I'm done finishing up this recipe, I was almost done. And then I decided to stop what I was doing because I just had this very, I don't know, eerie feeling. And I picked up the phone and I checked my messages, and it was actually her husband that had left me a message. And I called him back. He was still at the hospital waiting to see the doctor or to get more information. I don't remember exactly what it was, but he was still at the hospital waiting. And Chantal had died. That moment threw my world completely upside down. I remember waking up that day and thinking, it's going to be an awesome friggin' day today, because if you guys don't already know, I do partake in smoking marijuana. That being said, at that time, we used to order it in. And I had just received this delivery, and my husband was actually off work, and he was outside. He was fixing the roof on our shed. And then I got this phone call, and it literally brought me to my knees. I couldn't believe that the person that meant the most to me was no longer here. Couldn't believe the one person in my life that never judged me, no matter what I did, no matter what I told them, no matter what I had gone through. That person was no longer here. And man, it friggin' threw my world upside down. And even to this day, it's still extremely hard. And I miss her. God, I miss her. For anybody that knew Chantal, knew how awesome of a person she was. She loved everybody with everything that she was, everything that she had in her. She would give you the shirt off of her back. She would take you in. She would help you out. She would always have some kind of a stupid joke or something, just something to make you laugh, just to turn your day around, because she didn't like seeing people sad. She always did her best to make people smile. I think the thing that hurt the most was the fact that many years ago, she told me that all she ever wanted was to have a family. And she had gone through a few miscarriages, and it was very, very difficult for her. All she ever wanted was to be a mom. I remember her telling me one time that she prayed to God that she would finally have a child. And she didn't care if this child had any kind of disabilities. All she wanted was to be a mom and that she would figure it out along the way. And then one day she found out that she was pregnant. And uh, I still remember this story like it was yesterday. I was actually on my way, um, to Toronto. I was moving out of Sudbury, Ontario, and making my way to Toronto. And I was trying to pursue, possibility of a new career and a new path in life. We were standing at the Greyhound bus station. She had driven me there and, dropped me off and stood with me until my bus showed up. And I remember her belly was looking a little big, and no offense, like we were both chunky people to begin with, so I mean, it wasn't like that it was like super big or anything, but I kept teasing her and I was rubbing her belly, and I'm like, oh look, there's a baby in there. Oh look, there's a baby in there. And she kept saying, don't even say that. That's not even true. It's not possible. Blah blah blah. And then I hopped on the bus and I was off to Toronto. And the next day, she called me and she's like, I freaking hate you right now. I'm like, why? What's going on? What did I do? She's like, you're completely correct. I am pregnant. I was so excited for her. And we were just laughing and crying. And she only actually found out probably in her, she was probably about 5, 6 months along by the time that they'd put all this together, because she was still having her regular monthly cycles and stuff like that. So again, it's not like she would have any reason to believe that she was pregnant, right? So anyways, we rushed as much as we could to get everything set up for her. I was still living in Toronto, at the time, and made my way back to Sudbury and helped, clean up the house and get everything all ready for when, she came home with the baby. And it wasn't until her little guy was about 3 months old and I had moved back from Toronto and I was staying with her and her husband in Sudbury. And she started having some difficulties with the little one. And they went in and they tested him and so on and so forth. And throughout the years, they found out that he was nonverbal autistic and he had other issues as well. It ended up being a very difficult time for her. It was a difficult time for both of them. Don't get me wrong here. But he worked full time, so he was the one that took care of the household bills while she stayed at home and took care of their child. Now, she did her absolute best with him. She fought hard for so many things for him so that he wouldn't fall through the cracks of the system and be forgotten along the way. She stood strong for her son, and she did everything in her power right up until the very last breath that she took. She literally had her son set up. He was a teenager at this point, and they were getting ready to start transitioning him from living at home full time to living in a full time care facility. She fought long and hard for this little guy. She was very adamant about her husband making sure that he had Saturday off, because sometimes he would work on weekends to make extra money to help out with the bills. And she was very, very adamant about him being off that Saturday because they had an appointment. It was at a brand new facility. And because of how their son reacted to new situations, because of his autism, it was very important that she had help with him that day. So he made a promise that he would be there for her, be here. Yeah, I promise, I promise, I promise. A few days passes by, and she was up late, and it wasn't something unusual for her to do, because she tended to go online and try to learn a new business, or try to get involved with, somehow making money online. But the only time that she could do this is when her son was sleeping. So this woman was literally up sometimes like 24/7. Like, I don't know how she did it. So the night before she passed away, she was sitting at her computer. Uh, Her husband and son were sleeping. Her husband ended up waking up because he had to go to the bathroom. And he noticed her at the computer. She had headphones on or whatever, and he waved to her, and she waved back, and he went back to bed. A couple of hours later, had to get up and go to use the washroom again. Noticed that she was still at the computer. Went over, gave her a quick hug and kiss, and went back to bed. His alarm clock went off, and he got out of bed, and he noticed at this point that Chantal was now sleeping. So he had no idea roughly when she went to bed, but knew that she hadn't been sleeping very long. So their little guy got up, and he fed him breakfast, and, got him all ready for school, and so on and so forth. And, let Chantal sleep, because she had been up obviously for a long time, and, he did his best to let her sleep as long as she could. He went in to wake her up, and, at first she wouldn't get up, and she was a very, very, very difficult person to wake up in the morning. That girl could sleep 15 hours, and it didn't matter. It was impossible to wake her up sometimes. So he didn't think anything of it, and just thought she was extremely exhausted, and went about doing what he had to do. And then it got to a point where he needed to wake her up, because he had to leave for work, and their son was ready for school but needed to be put in the taxi or on the school bus. So he tried again to wake her up. And that's when he realized that she wasn't responding, she wasn't breathing, and he called 911. And when he called me to give me the news about Chantal, I was in complete shock. I had just talked to her the day before. She was supposed to be heading back to the hospital to have surgery, but all in all, I mean, her health was deteriorating, don't get me wrong here, but she was okay. There was no, she didn't really alert anybody to let us know that she was as bad off as she was. I'm assuming that she knew, but then again, maybe she didn't. Either ways, she did everything that she possibly could to fight for her son to the very, very end. And thankfully, her husband fulfilled her wish and brought their son to this new place, this new center that he was supposed to have his meeting and all that at. And things didn't go over as well as they expected, but given the circumstances of Chantal just passing away, the home was very understanding. So she literally just, she did everything in her power right till her last breath for her son, because man, he was the world to her. And when she said that, she prayed to have a child, and she didn't care if this child grew up with disabilities, that she would love that child no matter what, she did that. I applaud her sometimes, because I don't know how she did it. I lived with them, and watched the struggles that they went through with their son. because of his autism. And it's not, it's not my story to tell, but they went through, they sure went through a lot. And every single time that she faced a new challenge, she took it head on. She was not going to stop no matter what. And that's just the type of person that she was. Her and I met in 1986, and we shared so many things together. I was there for her when her mom passed away. I was there when she lost her brother, her sister. She was there for me when my dad passed away. She was married at the time, and her then husband both came down to Toronto to visit and be with me and to be there for my dad. And oddly enough, both of them are now gone. Chantal passed away, I believe it was a few months after her first husband did. And I don't know, it was just a kind of a weird coincidence that happened. She was very heartbroken when their marriage ended because she was the one that had been cheated on. So it was hard for her to accept that her marriage had ended because all she was trying to do was take care of her mom because her mom was sick at the time. And it became very overwhelming for her marriage. And unfortunately, her husband ended up cheating on her, and that's what ended their marriage. And we were there for each other through so many struggles, so many good times, so many bad times. And it hurts today knowing that I still can't pick up that phone and talk to her. And she'd be so proud of me. She'd be cheering me on Facebook. She'd be cheering me on YouTube, on Spotify, all my platforms. She would be all over them like white on rice and encouraging and sharing. And yeah, I miss her. She was the one person that no matter what happened in my life, that I could turn to. She's the one person that knew pretty much every single thing about me. I never lied to her. It wasn't until many years down the road that I lied to Chantal for the very first time. And it's something that I still to this day regret lying to her, but I don't regret doing what I did. And many of people may look down on me for this, but that's okay. Because I've beaten myself up enough over this. A few years before Chantal passed away, um, we had gone over to their house for a visit. And again, I'm not trying to put this woman down by any means because Chantal was above and beyond awesome in so many ways. Because life became overwhelming for her at times, especially having a son who was autistic and very, very high maintenance at times. She sometimes slacked on being able to keep up with certain chores around the house. And it happens to the best of us. It still happens to me to this day. However, when we were visiting, the little guy was eating a sandwich. and he had put it down on the windowsill. And all of a sudden, there were like maggots everywhere. And I took that sandwich out of his hand and I threw it in the garbage. And I went and made him a new sandwich. I put it somewhere away from the window so that he didn't have maggots crawling all over it. And I literally went into her kitchen and started doing her dishes, and there were maggots everywhere, 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 everywhere. And I was so heartbroken. Not because I didn't think that she was a good human being or I thought that she was abusing her child in any way, shape, or form, but I felt bad because she was in the situation that she was in. She didn't always have a lot of help because her husband worked full time and he was exhausted when he got home. So it made it, that much more challenging for her to keep on top of things, especially when your son was having a bad day. And I went home and I picked up the phone and I called Children's Aid and I made an anonymous phone call to have someone go in and check their home to make sure that the living conditions were okay. Because I literally saw maggots crawling all over this little boy's food. And that's something that I never told her. It was something that she thought that one of her other sisters had done. And I never said otherwise. And maybe it was wrong of me to let her think all those years that it was someone else that had done that. But it also gave her the kick in the butt that she needed to start handling everything a little bit better. She got better at making sure that when she put a sandwich down, there was no maggots around. She got better at cleaning her house and, keeping on top of things a little bit more. And it's not that it wasn't still messy. There were no maggots around. So at least that was safer than what it was before I called Children's Aid Society. Again, it's not something that it's not something that I wanted to do. It's not something that I ever wanted to do to my best friend, but it's something that needed to be done for the safety of her child and to make her understand that she needed to focus a little bit more on certain things around the house that was going to make her life and her son's life and her husband's life that much easier. And maybe it was a dirty way for me to do it, but I did. And something that I never told her. And it's something that I'll always, again, regret lying to her about because it's the only thing that I ever literally ever lied to her about, ever, in my entire life. We had known each other 30 plus years. If it wasn't if it wasn't for her, like I said, I don't know how I would have made it through most of my life. I don't know how I would have made it through the the criticism, the bullying, the failed marriage, the failed relationships, the being abused, all of it. I have her to thank for always being by my side. And I was always by her side in every single way that I possibly could be as well. And we had oh, we had such an awesome bond. And there were a few people throughout the years that tried to, you know, break that bond up because we were so close that people were kind of jealous about us at times. And they would, try to come in between us or whatever. Sometimes it worked for, a month or so, whatever kind of thing. And then ding, 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 we realized what's going on and we were back together and we didn't let anybody else separate us ever again. There's not very many moments in my life that don't include Chantal. When I was pregnant with my oldest daughter and my marriage had ended or we had separated for the first time, I was actually um, heading out to Newfoundland. I was going to go live with my mom and her girlfriend in Newfoundland. And I ended up staying with Chantal the night before. And we tried, I swear, 20 times trying to rewatch this movie. And we never got through the first 10 minutes of it. Because we would start talking about one thing, and then that would be like an hour-long conversation. And they'd be like, oh. So then we'd rewind the movie, because back then it was like VHS tapes. So you'd rewind the movie, hit play, start watching it, only to start talking about something else and be completely interrupted and not watch the movie. We did this for like 10 hours until it was time for me to leave for the airport the next morning. And we we hopped in our brother's car and he drove us out to the airport, and I ended up having my Walkman. Now, some of you doesn't know what a Walkman is. It's a little, like a little radio with headphones kind of thing or whatever, back in the day that people used to use, like a cassette player. And anyways, I had my Walkman on and I had my headphones in. I was on the plane and I was listening to the song Right Here Waiting by Richard Marx. And my plane took off. And as I'm sitting here on this plane, pregnant, emotional, listening to this damn song, I look out the window and there's Chantal standing there waving. And it just so happened that the radio was on in the car and the windows were down and the song Right There Waiting for You was playing. So that was always our song. There's so many days that have gone by in the past few years since Chantal's passed away that I wished I could pick up the phone and call her. Or I wish that I could send her a message on Facebook. Or I just wish that she was still here with us. She was the most beautiful human being you could ever meet. She had the biggest heart. And everybody that came across her path fell in love with her because of who she was. She was just, it didn't matter how down you were, as soon as Chantal was around, that was it. You had a smile on your face because that's who she was. And I wish that she was still around to this day. And since Chantal's passed away, I tried at the beginning to do my very best to keep in touch with her husband and check in on, her son and see how things were going, because I knew how much she struggled alone raising him at times, and I didn't want to leave him alone either. And I knew that if the shoe were on the other foot, that Chantal would be calling my husband, every other day or once a week or once a month. She would be checking in. And like I said, at the beginning, I did. And then I was so hurt and still so much in disbelief that my best friend, my sister, wasn't here with us anymore. I just kind of curled up into a little ball of darkness and disassociated myself from the whole world. I could not figure out how to live in a world that didn't have Chantal in it. And I think my biggest regret, or my biggest guilt that I still carry with me, is the fact that I know she would have been checking out my husband on a daily basis, and I have not been strong enough to do that lately. The last time that I spoke to her husband, it was by text message. I had sent him a text message to let him know that I was very sorry that I hadn't been in contact, um, but that my mom had just died, and I would be in touch as soon as I could, and I haven't been in touch since. And it hurts, and it's hard, because I know I'm a better person than that. I know I could do better. I know I could pick up that phone and call, and I know it's what I should be doing. But it's really hard knowing that she's not going to be the one answering that phone. And I just can't bring myself to pick up the phone and call. One of these days, I will be able to heal from that loss. And every day does get a little bit easier. And I have moments like this for her. I just wish I could be with her sometimes. And we could still talk and laugh and just be each other's support system. Because man, it is that. And although the last few years, my life has changed quite a bit, I wish that she could still be here and that we could still be hanging out together. I wish that she would have been able to make it for a visit to New Brunswick. That was one of our big plans when I had moved out here with my husband in 2018. We were making arrangements that she was gonna come out one summer and hang out and spend a couple weeks with us just for a visit to get away from it all and give her a bit of a break, and it never happened. And it breaks my heart because there were so many places that I wanted to bring her. I mean, she loved nature, and there was just so many places that I could have taken her that she would have fallen in love with, and she would have, I don't know, used as her safe space when she needed somewhere to go. So many places that she would have just appreciated. She would have loved walking along by the ocean or seeing a camel in the snow or so many cool things out here that she never had the opportunity to experience, and I really wish that she could have. And although she's not with me anymore, the one thing I will be the most thankful for is the day that she helped me realize who my husband was. I know it sounds funny, but I was single at the time, and I was kind of, getting depressed because I didn't have anybody in my life. And she's like, go online, go on a dating website, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. Absolutely not doing that. And she's like, come on, you never know, right? So I was like, okay. So I tried it out. So I jumped on Plenty of Fish, and as I said in one of my other stories, that's ended up how I met my husband again. I met my husband through Plenty of Fish. However, we had known each other also since 1986. So when I ended up stumbling across my husband's profile on Plenty of Fish, I was like, hey, this person seemed very nice, blah, blah, blah. Chantal was like, yeah, hey, yeah, you know him. And I'm like, what do you mean I know him? And she's like, Stacy. I'm like, Stacy who? Like, Alex's little brother, Stacy? She's like, yeah. So sent him a stalker message, and the rest is history there. We've been together now for the past 16 years. And if it wasn't for my best friend Chantal, I never would be in the relationship that I'm in right now. I wouldn't be living my life lottery with my husband. I wouldn't be happy. I wouldn't be back in New Brunswick. So many things that I wouldn't be without her. And I hope that she knows how much I miss her every single day. And I hope that she knows that I'm very sorry for not being, I don't know, as good of a friend or as good of a sister to her after she passed away by checking in on, her husband and her son a little more often than I have. But I hope she knows that I love her and that one day I'll get my head back on straight and I will pick up that phone and I will check in on her son and her husband. But right now, I'm just not strong enough. And as much as I wish I could be, I'm just not strong enough. So that's okay. Because I know she knows. I know, I know she knows I'm struggling without her. And that if I could mentally pick up the phone without completely losing my mind and have a conversation with her husband, that I would. But I just can't. So I just can't. She meant more to me than pretty much anybody in my life. Other than my children, obviously, and my husband. She meant more to me than anybody else. She meant more to me than my mom. She meant more to me than my dad. She was my world. And one of these days, I will talk to you a little bit more about her. Because she's just such an important part of my life that I don't want to miss out on anything about her. And there's just so many years to talk about. But for today, I'm just going to rest easy, knowing that she's no longer suffering and she's no longer struggling. And that one day I will see her again when it's bedtime.